How about now? Let me know. I think this worked. Hopefully. Yay. Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is an operator error. Idiot savant, I guess you could say, however you want to call it. More on the idiot and less on the savant, right? Let's start from the top. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you right now that as I said last week, the outfield position is the deepest position in all of fantasy sports. Last week, the elite guys kind of get you going, right? They kind of get you excited. There's a lot to talk about there, so we didn't get as far as maybe I wanted to, but I think it's important to circle back because this is where you win your league. The outfield position, if you attack it correctly, is where you win your league. Okay. Again, this is the deepest position in all of fantasy sports, and it's not close. It's not close. You can literally win or lose your draft, your team, your league if you choose wisely, if you choose poorly here, right? Because there's a ton of value. And if you're looking at your league, and you're thinking about it holistically, again, this is your opportunity to make up for blatant holes in your lineup when you're filling out your roster. Okay, what am I talking about? If you're in a league and you've been blessed with the opportunity to get, I don't know, a whole bunch of power, Matt Olson, Eugenio Suarez, Trevor Story, whatever, Jorge Soler. That's all fine and dandy. You need to fill in your holes with what your team's strengths are with this very deep class, okay? And tonight we're going to address that when we speak to it, okay? But first off, last week's show was a little bit kind of like, you're expecting a snowball thrown at you and you get a boulder thrown at you. There's a lot of information. There's a lot to absorb. Point to last week. I'll give you 2 points, and then we'll move on to these second guys. Only 2 players at the outfield position had 30 stolen bases. Only 2. And if you're outside the top 3 picks, you're probably not getting them. Yelich and Acuna. That's elite level speed. Okay? So then you go down to the next tier. How many players had 20 plus stolen bases? I'm not going to go on and on like I did last week because I got a lot of information to get to. Aside from those 2 players that I said had 30 stolen bases, only 5 more in the outfield position had 20 plus stolen bases. Okay? Today we're going to talk about these guys. It's important to drill down on these guys and identify where they're going and whether or not there's someone you want to maybe pin an ear note on when you're draft prepping, right? Those 5 players who had 20 plus stolen bases at the outfield position last year, Victor Robles, Starling Marte, Tommy Pham, Domingo Santana, Danny Santana, and Whit Merrifield. Okay? Those are the only other 5 players that had 20 plus stolen bases at the outfield position. Makes them really valuable. And really, if you think about it, outside of the 1-2, there's a variety of different draft positions. Danny Santana went 133, is going at 133 currently. That's a 12th round pick in a standard 12-team league. That's a really good value for 20 plus stolen bases, right? So, everyone needs 5 of them. It depends on your league, but when you're talking about 96 deep, it's not that hard to go on players that you really like at this position. Okay. And again, when you're talking about it, it's important to shed light on these silos, if you will, to know that if you don't have a top 3 pick, you're not getting Acuna, you're not getting Yelich. So you better damn well pick up Robles, Marte, Pham, Santana, or Merrifield. It's vital. Now, next layer down, there's a lot of value in mining guys with 10 to 15 plus stolen bases from last year, even outside of those 5 guys. So as you're going down through these, if a player has 15 stolen bases, at this position, they're pretty valuable, right? You would value that over someone who maybe gives you a hole. Hey, Andrew, can you help Dave Craig get on board? He said he still can't find it. Appreciate you. So that's what we're talking about when looking at things holistically. So tonight we're really going to try and focus on those guys that are providing in a place where there's not a whole lot of depth, okay? The other point is only 6 outfielders had 100-plus RBIs last year. Of those 3, 5 of them, of those 6, 3 were top 5 picks. So of those 6 outfielders that had 100 RBIs last year, 3 of them were top 5 picks. They were Trout, they were Acuna, and they were Bellinger. Aside from that, you got Soler, you got Harper, and you got Eddie Rosario from Minnesota. That's it, guys. So, again, just wanted to kind of give you a couple flashpoints before we get into this next group. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. But one guy that I do want to talk about that I glanced over a little bit last week, and I just mentioned Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper at 23, to me, this guy was a first-round pick last year. He moved teams. He stayed in the same division. But if you read his line only, 260, 35 homers, 96 runs, 114 RBIs, and 15 stolen bases. 15 stolen bases. Yes, the 260 isn't ideal. Mind you, he's a career 276 hitter. The last 2 years, he's hit 240, 249 and 260. Aside from that, he's a 276 hitter. His OBP is 372, putting him just outside the top 10 in on-base percentage. And he hits 3rd in that lineup, which means that 98, again, I'm talking about in a silo. I know this isn't your normal year. I know that we're kind of projecting a little bit, and that's fine. But the 98 runs could easily pass that bar, and he could easily be a 4-star player next year. And what I mean by that is being above the bar on homers, runs, RBIs, and stolen bases. Maybe that bar changes. This year we used 35 homers, 100 runs, 100 RBIs, and 20 stolen bases. He could achieve all of those categories. He was really close last year. Okay? So, again, as we're talking about this, awesome. Thanks, Andrea. As we're talking about this, just take in mind, not all sleepers need to come from the 5th round on. Here at 23, Bryce Harper is a serious sleeper. He's a first-round value that you're getting at the end of the 2nd round. So just a little bit of context as we're going through that. So it doesn't matter to me. If a guy's a 1st, 2nd, 3rd round pick, he could still be a sleeper. Because if you project his value and it's far beyond where he's currently being projected, it doesn't matter. He could be a 2nd, 3rd round pick. If you think he's going to be a top 5 pick next year, Eloy Jimenez, he's a value. That's what this is about. And I've kind of weighted this list accordingly. Okay? So when I do this list, again, I don't look at the ADP until after the fact. I kind of let projectability come and play a factor into how I do it. Okay, so let's jump right into them. Okay, sorry about the delay. I'll give you a proper introduction now. My name's Chappy. You're listening to Chaps Fantasy Chats. I'm coming to you live on Zoom. I'm also coming to you live on Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. If you are just listening or watching, please go over there and sign in. It helps. I think you'll find it enjoyable. You can go in and actually type questions. Great chat room there. Both Lenny and Andrea, the founders of the network, SiriusXM personalities, really just mentors. I mean, good friends and mentors to me are both currently in there. I do want to take a second and say thank you guys for sticking with me. Dave Craig, Andrea, Lenny, guest Ian, EUN. That's an interesting one. And guest Elena. Thank you guys. If you guys have questions, chirp in anytime. I will. I'll answer them as I can. But great group we got here. So thanks for joining. Let's talk about values. Let's talk about values in terms of the outfield position, because really there's a ton of it. And it's all flavor and it's all preference. And really, if you think about it, it's all in how you're building your team. Okay. If you go out and you get Trey Turner in the first round, you might want to backfill with a little bit of power here in this next tier. Or if you go out and you get a power hitter, Nolan Arenado, whatever, you might want to fill in with some speed here, because there's depth in both of those and you can kind of build in accordingly here. Okay. So the first 12, before we get into it, I want to talk through real quick. Acuna, Yelich, Trout, Bellinger, Soto, Betts, Marte, JD Martinez, Austin Meadows at number 9, Jordan Alvarez at 10, Harper, and Ketel Marte at 12. Of that group, the lowest ADP is 40. That's Meadows and Marte. Both of them. So what does that mean? This is the cream of the crop. You're not going to get these guys after the first part of the 4th round. All these guys will be gone. Okay? So it's important when you're creating draft strategy to keep that in mind, that if you wanted one of these elite outfielders, you need to spend accordingly early. And what I like to do is, I like to, again, balance my speed with my power. So if I draft if you draft a guy like Acuna early, you're blessed. You can kind of go either way. I kind of lean towards speed because you can get power elsewhere. But if you happen to have to get, JD Martinez or Jordan Alvarez, that's fine. You just need to be looking out for this second tier of guys. You need to be looking out for guys that have that speed asset. Because, again, if you don't get that at this position, you really might have to eat a shitty average. You really might have to eat something like a 203 from Malik Smith or, something like that. And you really don't want to do that. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're talking about these first 2 tiers of players. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about this second tier of outfielders, because I think this is vital. There's a lot of projection here. I will warn you. But again, we're talking about values. We're identifying values here, and that's the important part. When you're talking about players and projecting them, I like to look at where they're going to be at the end of the year versus where they are right now. Right now, stagnant. At the end of the year is projectable. So in other words, first guy, this works out to a T. Eloy Jimenez, okay? At 23 years old, his ADP is 59.6. He had 31 homers last year as a 22-year-old rookie. They've surrounded him with some more power, some more presence. Nomar Mazara, Encarnacion comes to mind. Grandal comes to mind. There's good bats all around him there. And he's going to grow into that role of your prototypical cleanup type hitter. At 59.6, this is an extreme value because a lot of these experts, Lenny Melnick included, have called this guy a top 5 player. You're getting him in the 6th round. So again, when you're talking about that second tier of outfielders, he kind of has to trump all these other guys because one, the floor is really high. Even if he goes out and hits 267, 31 homers, 69 runs, 79 RBIs, and 0 stolen bases again, it's a value at 59. I mean, that's a lot of homers. That's an average that's not killing you. That's a lot of RBIs. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it is contributing in at 4 of the 5 facets of counting stats in fantasy baseball. So 59.6 is a value, right? Um, so he has to be, in my humble opinion, your first guy that you talk to when you're talking about this group that's just outside of elite standings at the outfield position. So again, he stands to benefit from added talent. He's again growing into his abilities. He's shown an aptitude for proving he can do it already. You gotta love this kid and what he brings to the table. The next guy with an ADP of 45, to me, Chris Bryant. At 28 years old, he's had a down couple years, but you really got it. So last year he hit kind of all over the lineup, a lot of third, but this year they're talking about him as the leadoff hitter. Well, he hit 282 last year. Again, 31 homers, 108 runs, is sixth in the category. 77 RBIs and 4 stolen bases. Guys, if he's hitting leadoff for the Cubs, this could be a top 3 run getter. And he's a former MVP. So what I really like about him, he's a third baseman by trade. But if you're in this league where if you're in a league where you can change daily or even weekly, you can kind of use him to your benefit, and move him around where you need him according to injuries and whatnot. But again, at 45 years old, you're talking about a former MVP. I think he's an extreme value here, and that's why I put him second on this list in this second tier of outfielders. The third guy, again, so the one thing I want to talk about Bryant, he does have a bit of ability to steal some bases. I don't know if he'll ever get back to double digits. I think that's probably a little aspirational for him, but he could give you 7, 8, 9 stolen bases, maybe more, if they do decide to run a little bit with him. But again, a 4th round pick for a former MVP, I'll take that chance every day. Number 3 of this second round, Victor Robles. So I'll pose this question, my first question of the day, and I'll do this throughout, right? Because I want to know who you guys prefer. Okay? Eloy Jimenez at 23 years old, an ADP of 59.6, or Victor Robles, also at 23 years old, with an ADP of 77.4. Do we have a preference there? Now, one's going to give you more homers, but the thing with Robles is, again, 17 homers last year, 255, you'd like to see a little higher, 86 runs. But the kicker, Eloy and Victor Robles, the kicker about Robles is, I see 28 stolen bases as a floor. I think he joins that elite 30 stolen base club pretty easily when all this shit gets put aside. And he becomes really, all he needs is a small bump in his home run output. And I'm not talking about 40. Give me 25. 25 and 40 out of Victor Robles. Home runs and stolen bases. He's a first-round pick. Damn near, anyway. So you're talking about getting him in the 6th or 7th round? So to me, yes, I do have it. And again, this has to be a little bit flexible because it really depends on what you get on the front end of this. I'm a proponent of getting one of the top 12. So in other words, a top 4-round pick. But then if I get a power guy for my first outfielder, I want to turn around and get a speed guy here. I'm looking directly at Victor Robles. 77.4 ADP. Talk about him hitting third some this year for the Nationals. Might stunt his growth a little bit from a stolen base perspective, but I don't think it does a whole lot. That's a big part of his game, and I think that he embraces that. So I love him at 77.4. I actually value him over Eloy a little bit, just because of the stolen base factor. They're just so elite. Okay. But again, this is kind of a flexible list. So in a perfect environment, Eloy over Victor. Biased wise, Victor over Eloy. Just my personal take. The next guy's interesting. I talked about him a little bit last week. He led all outfielders in home runs and RBI. Led all home outfielders in homers and RBI. He's 28 years old. Yet you can get him at an ADP of 84.8, which equals out to about an 8th, 9th round pick. I'm talking about Jorge Soler. And the reason why Jorge Soler comes at a discounted rate, he kind of has to show it to you. We're talking about a 6-year veteran here who, until last year, had never played more than 105 games. Get this. Last year, Soler eclipsed his career high in homers, RBI, and games played. Excuse me, not games played. Games played were 300 in 5 years. But he had 48 homers last year. Prior to last year, he had 38 career home runs. He had 132 RBIs last year. I got that flipped. He had 117 RBIs last year. He had a career 132 RBIs prior to that. But it makes my point. My point is, show me. Give it to me again. That's why, in my opinion, he's right below these other three. Because these guys in front of him have already shown in some way, shape, or form their ability. Whereas Soler's kind of been a one-hit wonder. Okay? But if you need power, 28, Malpal. If you need power, if you need RBIs, and you have a guy sitting at the end of your outfield tiers, so outfield 60 to 84 that you like, why not take a chance on Jorge Soler? Because the rest of the numbers don't hurt you. Yeah, he stole 3 bases last year. Who cares? You're going to have to backfill some stolen bases behind him. But 265 is not killing you. 95 runs isn't killing you. He just needs to stay healthy. The next guy on this list, as we teeter-totter back and forth between homers and stolen bases, but it is important. His teammate, Whitley Merrifield. Whit Merrifield's going about 40 points higher than Jorge Soler. And I get it. 40 points higher in average. 10 more runs. Of course, the stolen bases. He had 20 stolen bases last year. 7th in the category. He hit 302. But the reason I like Soler over Whit, I've seen Soler play. And if he's healthy, He's certainly more talented. He's on the younger side of the bell curve. And he's in the American League now, so really he DHs predominantly. He is still an outfielder technically, but again, um, he doesn't have to worry about playing the field as much. He can rest his knees. He can rest his back. I'm not saying I don't like Merrifield. I mean, I have him up here fairly high. Um, he's the first non stud star that I have here, in my opinion, anyway. If you talk about the first 12, obviously they're really talented. This first four here, I mean, they're just super talented. They're super high upside with these guys, right? Merrifield isn't that. Merrifield is kind of you hate to say it this high, but he kind of fills out your roster. He's kind of one of those guys that if you have a Joey Gallo, if you have a one of these low average type players, uh, he kind of helps that out. But then he gives you the stolen bases and the runs to go with. He's 31 years old. His days playing in the infield are most likely over. So again, he is still eligible at second base. But with the emergence, I don't know if the emergence is the right word. Kansas City really likes Nicky Lopez. They plan on playing him there. So that makes him an outfielder only, which maybe minimizes his value a little bit. But for this year, he's still a second baseman, right fielder. So I'll take it for one more year. Why not, right? You're going to be like, what? Malpal, it's new, it's crisp, it's sharp. There's no sweat stains on it. I bought an Expos hat too, which I love. I just don't have any really good blue shirts to go with it yet, so I'll work on that. But no, the Pirates hat's probably going to be here to stay for a little while. I also got a Durham Bulls hat, which it's got it's been in the softball field a couple times. Let's just put it that way. So there's the sweat rings and all that stuff, which is great. But yeah, I can't help it. I do love the Pirates hat. The black and gold just looks good, right? So again, the next outfield I want to talk about, and again, you kind of have to. I don't want to put these guys too low because they are really good players still. Charlie Blackmon at 33 years old, I have as my 2.6, my 18th overall outfielder. His ADP is actually 37.6. I dropped these guys on purpose because they're probably going to get drafted before this. Now, I do want to pay a little bit of tribute here to Blackmon. Really good year last year. 314, 32 homers, 112 runs, all in the top 20 at the category, 86 RBS. The reason why I've dropped Blackmon, guys, he is really not a factor anymore when it comes to stolen bases. And that's important. Although he did put up comparable numbers in the other categories, particularly average runs and homers, he just, he isn't the 30-30 player he was from 3 years ago. And that's okay. He still has value. He's playing in the best offensive park in the league. He's got a really good young team around him, offensively anyway. But at 37.6, I just don't see me investing very heavily in him. That said, it's good to have those ADPs because if he does fall, it's good to know that he is falling, right? And maybe you might want to reach up and grab those numbers. But to me, I would rather have Jimenez, Bryant, Robles, Soler, Merrifield in front of him, and that's personal preference. The next guy who I love, and this guy was on his way to a career year last year when he got hurt mid-season, Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo, to me, is one of the biggest values on the board. So 72.2, Last year, he hit 253, 22 homers, 54 runs, 49 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. Y'all have heard me go on and on and on about Gallo. I know, a lot of you guys that are in here, you've been in here, you've heard the Gallo spiel, you've heard all that stuff. But I do have a few other things. This always just kind of jumps off the page. You guys know, and I'll tell you how I do it. I go into Baseball Reference, and you go into the hitting logs, and you go for the season, or you can go 10 games or 28 games or 2 games, however you want to do it, and it'll project out for the year what he does if he's hitting at that pace. When Gallo got hurt last year, he was hitting 276. He was on pace for 55 homers, 133 runs, and 133 RBIs. He was hitting 67 points higher than his career high at the time he strained his oblique last year. He looks more poised and patient at the plate. And if I'm just projecting out based on what I saw from him at the beginning of last year for a good portion of it, I think you're looking at a 270 hitter. I think you're looking at you're looking at 50 homers. I think you're looking at 120 runs, 120 RBIs. Those are all elite. Those are all 120 runs might be a touch. 110 runs, 120 RBIs. Out of Gallo, I think. And again, when you're talking about a 7th round pick, it's a potential first rounder. Both Gallo and Soler have 50 homer ceilings. I feel like they're both steals here, okay? So let's do this. I want to give you guys a couple survey questions. Chris Bryant or Whit Merrifield? Bryant's 28, Merrifield's 31. Bryant's ADP is 45, Merrifield's ADP is 47. The other one I want to ask you guys about, Nick Castellanos or Joey Gallo? This is interesting to me because Castellanos is going into one of the best hitting environments in the league. I'd say top 5. Dude was miserable in Detroit, it showed. He was excited as all can be in Chicago. But now, Cincinnati spent all this money. This guy reminds me of J.D. Martinez when he left Detroit. JD never put up great numbers in Detroit. It wasn't until he got out that he started putting up great numbers. He put up good numbers. So did Castellanos. You can see a really big jump out of him in a Reds uniform, even from what he did last year. Keep an eye on Castellanos. I'm going to move on. Castellanos or Gallo? Let me know, guys. The other guy, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Castellanos has an 88 ADP. All of these guys in this second 24, with one exception, are in the top 100. So you're talking about 24 outfielders going to the first 100 picks. That's a quarter. That's a quarter of the first 100 picks going directly to the outfield position. It puts things in perspective, right? You have to invest early, but you have to invest wisely. George Springer is the next guy, number 21. His ADP is 41.6. Springer had amazing numbers last year. 292, 39 homers, sixth amongst the position, 96 runs, 96 RBIs, 6 stolen bases. Springer kind of falls, he's 30 years old, kind of falls in the same category to me as Charlie Blackmon. Once the stolen bases start to go away, he loses a little bit of luster. That said, it's hard to take into account. It's hard to discount, rather. 39 homers is damn near two-star elite, right? I mean, there's not many guys getting up to the 40 homer air, and Springer did that last year. But when you think about moments in time, I think Springer is one of those guys that benefited greatly from the tipping scandal. And this is all speculative. Who knows? I could be totally off on this. But the way I choose to approach it is age, where you are on the ascension of your bell curve with development. Have you done it? And bias, okay? I get a feeling with Springer that all of these numbers might go down. But just like with Jose Ramirez at the third base position, that might mean stolen bases go up. Because if you're struggling at the plate, if you're not hitting 292, if you're hitting 252, if you don't have 39 homers, if you have 25 homers, you're not driving in the runs or scoring the runs, you might try and want to force it when you're on the base. So, and Doug, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Again, the fourth one comes in there, biased. Doug, again, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to Doug Boyle. I'm talking to him on Lenny Melnick, FantasySports.com. If you go and you sign in there, chat room there is great. You have a bunch of great baseball minds in there. I don't like to talk a lot of the crap. I want to talk about statistics. I want to talk about thought processes. And really, that's what I'm all about. So Doug brings a great point. George Springer missed 40 games last year, he had 39 homers. But I'm having I'm having a hard time refuting that point, Doug. 292 with 36 homers, 90. I mean, you add 40 games worth of stats onto that, you might be talking about. So I might have him a little low. I love these conversations because I'm human being enough to know that I do have bias. So when I do make this list of, if God forsake, we have a draft, if we go and we get to play baseball and all that stuff, I'm going to bump George Springer up because Doug makes an excellent point. He's high on your ADP, though. 41.6 is still high to me. Aaron Judge, the number 22 outfielder, ADP of 46.6. He's battled this rib crap for a while now. He had 27 homers last year. He had 272. 75 runs. I don't know here. I mean, so I had these two guys like kind of purposefully bumped down a little bit. And it sounds like I did this right. It sounds like I did this right. It sounds like Springer over Judge here, right? Is that what you guys are telling me? You take Springer over Judge, right? And you know, I guess it depends because Judge is 28 years old. A lot of people really thought he was going to be this, and he's been a really good player. He's just fought staying healthy, and that's an issue. But again, I have a hard time knowing what I know about his continued rib injury and his continued struggle to stay on the field, putting him any higher than this. Here's the next guy I want to talk about. I would take Arnie Jones before Aaron Judge's. Nah, I don't know. It's a flip. It depends on if I need power or if I need insight, George. If I need insight, I'm taking Arnie Jones. If I need power, I'm probably taking Aaron Judge. In all seriousness, outfielder number 23. It's a guy that a couple years back was really, and this is where value comes into play. A couple years back was really thought to be like the next big thing with the New York Mets. Talking about Michael Conforto. In his age 27 year, 257 last year, 33 homers, 90 runs, 92 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. What do you guys think of Conforto? I'll tell you, this guy, when he came up, was the next big thing. And I'll tell you, I really do feel like at 120 and a 10th round pick is a real value. I think 257 is low for him. A full sample size season, I think 33 homers is low for him. He had a good year. But this is a guy just getting ready to go into his own as far as professional development goes that I think is really has the ability to outperform where he's being drafted. And that's what this exercise is all about. So I really like Conforto, and I'm bumped him up into this second round, the second tier of outfielders, because I do think he's battled some unfortunate luck. And I know that's just an excuse, right? But fact of the matter is, he's still performed. The last guy in this first tier for tonight, second tier generally, is Marcell Ozuna. His ADP is 99.6. He's a 29-year-old. He moved teams. He's now in Atlanta. He should be hitting in the middle of that lineup, a really good lineup. But at 99.6, I feel like that's a value. Remember when Yelich and Ozuna were both in Miami? And myself, I don't know about everybody else, myself thought that Ozuna was the one that was the elite talent, and Yelich would just be a good ball player. Well, boy, that's flipped, right? I mean, we think differently now. I think differently now. At 29 years old, there's still room to grow with Ozuna. He's had some up and down years. But again, as a 99.8 ADP, I think it's a value. 241 last year, 29 homers, 80 runs, 89 RBIs. He did have 12 stolen bases. I feel like that's a little bit of a result of him struggling at the plate and trying to make things happen. But nonetheless, 12 stolen bases are serviceable and something that can help you. It's one of those guys that I talked about earlier. That's if you do draft a power guy that gives you a hole in stolen base. If you draft a Eloy Jimenez, it might not be bad to come back with Marcell Ozuna. So again, what do you guys think about that? I'm just interested to know. Second tier, the second 12. I'm going to go a little bit more quickly. I'm going to give you guys another 20 minutes or so. But this is where it's kind of fun. I'm going to give you guys a couple comparisons first. Would you rathers, if you will. Guys, would you rather a 23-year-old Franmil Reyes with an ADP of 131 or a 25-year-old Oscar Mercado with an ADP of 132? Again, totally different players. I chose them because they're literally back-to-back in ADP. They're both young and both probably haven't hit their full ceiling yet. But I think it's fun when we're talking about these guys, especially in this context, because, and I don't want to put the horse in front of the buggy, Mercado brings the stolen bases. Reyes does not. We'll compare a little bit later. Uh, so let me know who you guys like, Fran Mill or Mercado. Um, my first outfield three. So outfielder number 25. And this guy, I've let this guy fall here. But you can't let him fall too far because of who he is. It's Giancarlo Stanton. ADP is 77. I'm giving you 2018 stats, but it's important because he stayed healthy. He stayed healthy. Um, for his first 2 years as a Yankee, and he's kind of gotten this rap as a injury prone player, rightfully so or not. I'm not here to judge. In year prior, in 2018, he had 266, 38 homers, 102 runs, 100 RBIs, and 5 stolen bases. You're talking about the 25th overall outfielder with an ADP of 77. This guy's really talented. It probably should be higher. Rich says Fran Mill all day. And so my second outfielder, third tier outfielder, 3.2 is how I like to say it. So the second, third tier outfielder for me is Franmil Reyes. Now, the thing about Reyes is he kind of handcuffs you a little bit. He's a DH. But 249, 37 homers, 69 runs, 81 RBIs as a 24-year. He's 24 years old, guys. His ADP, here's the kicker. His ADP, 131. It's an extreme value. And I don't think we can take that for granted. This is how you build your team. You build your team with these Franmil Reyes, with these Michael Confortos, these guys that your novice players, they're not going to think about. They're going to be all in faction. Oh, I got to get Aaron Judge. Screw that shit. Give me Michael Conforto. Right? That's how I feel about it. So if you got to go around earlier on a guy like Conforto, why not? Why not? 249, 37 homers last year as a 23-year-old. 81 RBIs. The Indians are going to use him. They have to. The next guy, McNeil, I'll tell you, I was higher on McNeil earlier in the year. What I like about Jeff McNeil, the average, 20-plus stolen bases, the position flexibility, second, third, left, right. There's a lot to like about Jeff McNeil, but I feel his 85 ADP is what caused me to move him down a little bit. That and the fact that he doesn't give you a whole lot in the stolen base category. If you're going to give me all those other numbers, I want to feel a few more stolen bases from you. 5 last year, but second, third, left, and right. If that's not the most ideal position flexibility, I don't know what is. Because when you're talking about second, third, left, and right, you're talking about you can play second and middle. You can talk about you play third and short or third and corner. It really is. It's a flexible, versatile player. So you have to take that into account. The other thing you have to take into account of McNeil is he's 28 years old. So he's a late bloomer. You're only going to get 2 or 3 years out of him before you start talking about him being, the Whit Merrifield type. Oh, you got to worry about him falling off. But that said, if you draft these guys early with the empty average for whatever reason, I mean, you shouldn't if you're listening to this, right? But it happens. It happens sometimes. McNeil is not a bad option. I just, again, at 85, I think that's a little high. The next guy, another guy who's kind of these guys all either have warts or have to prove a little something yet, right? That's not true because these next two I really like after Tommy. Tommy Pham's the next guy. Tommy Pham, I'll tell you, he's battled injuries, he's battled vision problems. But what I like about Tom Pham is the stolen bases. Tied for fourth with 25 stolen bases last year. 273 average, 21 homers. Like to see the runs a little bit. Now, he's changing scenery. He's changing leagues. He's changing coasts. And he's going to this huge field with huge gaps. So you would think that 273 might, and I know they brought the fences in at San Diego a little bit. I understand that. I get it. But 273, think it'd have to go up a little bit. You have to think his runs would go up a little bit. 77 last year. The stolen bases, though, 25 stolen bases. It's a pretty damn good benchmark. Again, tied for fourth. So 5 other players had 25 plus stolen bases last year at the outfield position. You have to spend a little bit on him. But if you miss out on a guy like Robles, it might behoove you to go and make a chance on Pham. The next guy, 3.5. I love this guy. This is one of my favorite players, period. Ramon Laureano. ADP of 103.8. This guy's been ultra consistent for 2 years. He has yet to play a full year. Yes, King Hap, I'm having a drink with you. Tonight I'm having Buffalo Trace. I do need to fill it back up, and I will for you. Last week, I didn't like the end product. I felt like I got into that third drink a little fast. This week, I'll have you guys know I'm disciplined. This is just number 2. So I'm pretty crystal tonight. I say good stuff when I'm drunk. I mean, I'm just telling you guys, it's it's not about knowing your limitations. But I'll tell you what I love about Ramon Laureano. 103.8 is ADP, so you're talking about an 11th round pick. He gives you average. He gives you homers. He gives you runs, and he gives you stolen bases. If you're building your team, if you're looking for a second or a third outfielder, that's where you want to build. You want to build on average. You want to build on runs. You want to build on homers, and you want to build on stolen bases. He gives you all of those. And he doesn't kill you in RBI. He had 67 RBIs last year. But again, at 103, 288, 24 homers, 79 runs, 67 RBIs, and 13 stolen bases, he could be a top 5 run producer, hitting in front of the likes of Chapman, Olsen, Davis, Semien, all those guys, right? Murphy. And he's just fun. He's just fun to watch play. Okay. Again, at 25 years old, I think that you're looking at a great opportunity for exceeding expectation here. I don't think Ramon Laureano is 103.8 ADP. I think he's going into his prime. I know he's going into his prime. I think you've seen improvement in all those numbers. Just like I like Oscar Mercado. We all weren't sure what to think of Mercado last year when he came up. He was a Cuban guy coming over. We weren't sure. Switched teams. I think he was with Texas. Switched teams. There wasn't a whole lot about him. He's a homer, stolen base. Right? He had a pretty damn good year. He's only 20. Laureano and Mercado are the same age. They're both 25. You can get Mercado 30 picks later. And they're both equally intriguing as far as I'm concerned. So what I like about Mercado is he's hitting at the top of that lineup. He stole 15 bases last year, excuse me. He stole 15 bases last year. And he hit 15 homers. He's a 25-25 guy in his peak. I really do feel like this is another one of those players, just like with Laureano. If you hit 25 and you hit 280, you're in a single digit rounds anyway. And I think that's a very reasonable floor for both of these guys. You're talking about real value with both of these players. And they're both on the side of the age side of the bell curve that I really like to see my players, and that's going up. You don't have to worry about, oh, is Andrew McCutchen going to have another good year? Give me the guy. Oh, is Laureano going to bust out this year? Is Franmil going to bust out this year, right? Those are the guys I want to take a chance on. Yeah, they flop sometimes, but that's why you draft depth. Michael Brantley is the next guy. He's an old dog, 33 years old. But you sure do like what he brings to the table. 121 ADP. He stayed healthy last year, which he had fought some injuries in Cleveland. Again, 311, sixth in average amongst the outfielders, 22 homers. This would have been an interesting comp. Jeff McNeil or Michael Brantley? What do you guys think about that? And this just came to me. I don't have it written down or any of that crap. I think these guys are the same player. 22 homers, 88 runs, 90 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. I think the average stays fairly close for Brantley. Again, he's a Houston player, so you have to take that into account. There's a possibility of regression. But runs and RBIs are really close to elite. He's never going to give you 30 homers. He's never going to give you double-digit stolen bases, and that's fine. Brantley or McNeil? 85 for Brantley is his ADP. 121 for McNeil. Sorry, I said that back. 85 for McNeil, 121 for Brantley. I want to move on. Max Kepler, outfielder number 32. He's 27 years old, had a really good year last year. 252, 36 homers, 98 runs, 90 RBIs, 1 stolen base. ADP of 123.2. There's a little bit much swing and miss in his game for me personally, but I don't think it's so much that he falls off the edge of the earth. He's still draftable at 123. I mean, you're talking about a 10th round pick. There's a reason why I have him below some guys in the 130s above him, right? But that said, he's in a really good offense. He's shown an ability. 36 homers last year, tied for 10th among outfielders. 98 runs and 90 RBIs. Those aren't numbers to sneeze at. Those are really serviceable numbers. He's still young. But the thing I just can't get over with Max Kepler is he's kind of an afterthought. To me, if Byron Buxton goes all out this year and does what we thought Byron Buxton was supposed to do, that squeezes Max Kepler. Big time. Number 33, Eddie Rosario. Speaking of teammate love, right? 28 years old. His ADP is 91.2. I put them together because first off, I think it's fun to do that, right? So what do you guys think? Kepler or Rosario? 276, 32 homers, 91 runs, 109 RBIs. Fifth amongst all outfielders in RBIs. That's important. 3 stolen bases. It's important because, like I said at the beginning of the show, scroll all the way up here. Only 6 players had 100 RBIs last year at the outfield position. And 3 of them are in the top 5 picks in Bellinger, in Trout, and in Acuna. He's one of 3 players that had 100 RBIs last year. We can't let that. It's significant. Okay? And while I put him right below Kepler, when you're looking at things, maybe Rosario is the way to go there. They're only a year different. Rosario's 28, Kepler's 27. Why I ultimately put Kepler above Rosario was the ADP. Kepler at 123, Rosario at 91. That's a lot less investment for the risk you're putting in with these guys. So I'll throw a third into that menage a trois. Kepler, Rosario, or Danny Santana? Danny Santana is going at 133. He's going lower than both of those guys in front of him. Danny Santana, you come a late bloomer. That's fine. I understand that. Disagree a little bit because he had a couple good years in Minnesota earlier in his career. Maybe not 28 homers and 21 stolen bases good. But the other thing about Santana that I love is if you're in a league that has a 10-game requisite for games played before they're eligible at that position, you're looking at Santana being eligible at first, at second, in left, center, and right field. So first middle or first corner, second middle, left, center, and right field. You're talking about a really versatile player. Yes, you don't like that he's 29 years old. I get that. I understand that. But the guy's got a bit of a proven track record. I won't call it success, but he has aptitude. He's capable. And to me, I really feel like at 133, and you're talking about 21 throw out the homers. 28 homers is great. I'm looking at that 21 stolen bases, 6th best amongst the category, and he's hitting 283. It's a touch of a risk. But in the 13th round, the 12th round, whatever the hell it is, I'm willing to take that risk because of his versatility. If Santana pans out, and you can put a first baseman that's going to steal you 20-plus bases in there, that's why you draft depth. You try and draft versatility, but then you try and draft depth at this position. So a guy like Santana being multi-position eligible, but then also having that stolen base aspect is really valuable. And I think at 133 is way too low. We'll talk about 2 more guys, then we'll jump off of here. I hope you guys have enjoyed this content. I do want to tell you, my name's Chappy. The show's Chaps Fantasy Chat. I come to you on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. I'm brought to you tonight on Zoom. I believe I'm still on Spreaker. I haven't checked in a little bit because I've been doing the Zoom thing. But, love having all the guys in the chat room tonight. Andrea, Dave Craig, Doug Boyle, Lenny, George, King Hap. I'll tell you, it's really been cool to see the support tonight, even with the technical difficulties at the beginning of the show. I appreciate you guys. Rich Daniels is on. He's watching on Zoom, so that's always cool. We're still trying to figure out like how to link up Zoom to the chat room. I haven't done that yet, so he's IMing me, which I appreciate, asking me questions and all that stuff. Not asking me questions, I guess, making comments, but it's always good to have the support and the feedback, right? So two more guys. It would be, and I'm not going to surprise you guys that have listened to me. I'm not surprising you guys, but two guys that jump off the page to me that I put into this tier that need discussed. One, Kyle frickin' Schwarber, ADP of 141.8. You guys that got into the chat room tonight, you saw me advertise for the show. I cut him off the neck. Kind of, we have the same neck, kind of fat, short, stubby. But Kyle Schwarber is my favorite sleeper. The reason why I say that, first off, you got to love the 141 ADP. Second off, you got to love 38 homers last year as a leadoff hitter predominantly. Schwarber hated leading off. He hit 250 with 92 RBIs and 82 runs. He's not hitting leadoff this year. Brian is. So you have to think he hit 264 outside of the leadoff spot. He drew 70 walks and he carried a 339 on base percentage. This guy, hitting now in a more appropriate place in the lineup, could hit you 40 homers and drive in 110. His on-base percentage, 339, would lead to him scoring a lot of runs. Just 27 years old. He's getting more and more used to playing left field. Schwarber will be a considerable value at 141. The last guy I want to talk about in depth, I kind of feel bad because I have more stuff, but I'm trying to stay married. The last guy I want to talk about, and I'll go through the next 12. I'll go through them quickly. Lourdes Gurriel. Gurriel, guys, is one of those guys. People don't realize that ADP is 150, which equals a 13th round pick. Little brother of Yuli Gurriel. People know that. What people don't know is his namesake, Lourdes Sr., was a great Cuban national player. He actually was personal friends with Fidel Castro. But the reason why, one of the reasons why, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to pretend that I know these guys personally, right? I obviously don't. But one of the reasons why is what Lourdes Sr. was always known for, what his calling card was being a clutch player. He was very competitive. So I looked at this article. I got a couple quotes that I just want to talk about, right? So this article is basically interviewing Lourdes and Yuli, and they're talking about their dad. And it's really kind of cool because those of you guys that have known me for a while, you know that my dad was he was a high school baseball coach, nothing big, but he's pretty well known in the North Central West Virginia area. And I like to think that I do what I do because of the things that he did and the work ethic and the professional nature that he brought to work every day. That's why I'm able to do the things I do. So when I see guys like Lourdes and Yuli Gurriel, and I see how they have this relationship with their father, it pulls on the emotional heartstrings, right? So I want to give you guys a couple quotes. I want to let you know about, just a little bit about how good their dad was. So Lourdes says, "I'm very, very proud of my dad being a legend in Cuba. He's always been a mentor to me in everything, as a human being, as a baseball player. I'm definitely grateful to have him as my dad." One of the things about Lourdes Sr. is his attributes, what he's proven, right? So he has 1 Olympic gold medal, and he has 6 gold medal finishes at World Cups. He won 7 intercontinental golds and 4 Pan Am gold medals. Um, he has 3 Central American and Caribbean Gold Glove finishes, and a Gold Glove at the Goodwill Games. So very highly decorated. One of the coolest things that I read in that article was the fact that he was the best clutch hitter on those Cuban national teams. And I think that goes a long way when you're talking about the makeup of Lourdes Gurriel Jr. And, you know, it's one of those things. He's been in the majors now. This is his, I think, 3rd year. He's 26 years old, while Yuli is now 35 and descending on the age Bell scale. Lourdes is just hitting it. And the possibilities with him are endless. Positives. He's found an everyday spot. He's the everyday left fielder in Toronto. He's going to hit in the middle of that lineup. It's a really damn good lineup. So I don't say this lightly. Lourdes Gurriel could end up being the best bat in that lineup. This guy has an extremely high ceiling. The fact that he's playing in Toronto, where they have this young core who are really talented, who have come up together. It's a hitter park. Yes, it's a tough division. But he's already shown a high aptitude. He hit 277 with 20 homers in just 84 games last year. In 149 career games. So here's what kind of starts to jump out. In 149 career games over 2 years, he's hit 279 with 31 homers. At what, 22 and 23 years old? I'd say that's a pretty safe floor for Lourdes. So 280, 30 homers, 100 RBIs. Double-digit stolen bases, by the way. Makes him a potential first-round pick, doesn't it? And you're talking about getting him at 150 in the 13th round? I know you got to project a little bit. I get it. But I think it's an easy projection. Not all projections work out. I get it. But here's someone who I think is a pretty solid pick. Now, I'm going to skim through these guys. I'm going to talk about 2 of these guys in particular because I love this next group. So 37 through 48, what a great group. Edman, 136. Dahl, 140. Calhoun, 179. Tucker, 166. Buxton, 177. Kingery, 180. That's the ADPs, guys. 181 for Kingery. Brian Reynolds, 180. Luis Robert, 100. You see, I'm low. Benintendi, 113, and David Peralta, 233. 2 guys I want to talk about here. Shit, I'll give you 3. 3, and then I'm going to get off here. Edman, Dahl, and Calhoun. Tommy Edman's interesting. ADP of 136 equals right around the 13th round pick. The 11 homers, 15 stolen bases, they don't necessarily jump off the page. But he only played 92 games last year. So if you project that out, 19 homers, 26 stolen bases, projected 104 runs in the 12th round, He's considerable value. Now, he has to find the everyday playing time, but I think he's got that. David Dahl, and again, an ADP of 140.6 is laughable. 12th round pick. If this guy had stayed healthy last year, you're talking about probably about a 6-round swing in where he's drafted. He's been injury plagued. But when he got hurt last year, he was having a career year. He was hitting 314 with runners in scoring position. He was hitting in the three hole, and he was riding a 10-game hitting streak. Guys, keep in mind, it's only his 4th professional year. David Dahl is going to stay healthy one of these years. And when he does, not if, when he does, you're looking at a 300 average hitter with 30 homers and possibly double-digit stolen bases. At 140, this guy's hitting in the middle of the lineup in the best hitting park in the major leagues. I love David Dahl, especially at 140. The last guy I want to talk about, Willie Calhoun. Calhoun's offense has never been his problem. It's always been his defense. His offense has always been his trademark. His ADP is 179, a 15th rounder. He's starting to get a little bit of traction before he got hit in the jaw in spring training. But what Calhoun brings to the table is everyday playing time and a really good offense. And if his defense suffers the ability to hit in the designated hitter position, but 269, 21 homers, 51 and 48, you're looking at a 30-homer guy next year. And you're talking about a guy you're getting in the 15th round? That's huge. So this is what I'm talking about. Kevin Sandoval was leading off all spring, tons of running that lineup at Park. I mean, yeah, and so this is what we're talking about. When we get down to this level, we're talking about guys that you can project pretty easily into success. And again, a lot of these guys on this, Edman, Dahl, Calhoun, Kyle Tucker, Byron Buxton, still very projectable. He's only 26 years old. Kingery, Reynolds, all of these guys are young. All of them are young. All right, guys, 8:42. Thank you all for the support. Listen to Chappy. Next week, I'm going to do pitchers. I'm going to do it similarly. I'm going to do two weeks. We'll talk about the probably, let's be realistic, the top 12 first, and then we'll talk about the rest after that. But Chaps Fantasy Chat is brought to you on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. It's brought to you by Buffalo Trace Bourbon tonight. See, the bottle's getting kind of low. So I celebrate that because that just means I get to go get another one. I get to go get something new. Buffalo Trace is an amazing whiskey. It's very smooth. It's very I know what I'm getting into when I drink Buffalo Trace. But anyway, Chat's Fantasy Chat, Tuesday nights at 7 on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me. King Hap, Royals Boom, Kevin Hastings, Mal Powell. I won't say your name this week. Apologize last week for blowing your cover. Doug Boyle, Lenny Melnick, Andrea Lamont, Rich Daniels, Dave Craig, anyone else out there who's listening who, isn't signed in or whatever, get there and sign in. We love seeing you. We love seeing you. They're supporting us. So, again, support your podcasters. Lenny tomorrow morning at 9. King Hap tomorrow night at 7. Him and Taco do a great show. So thank you guys for supporting. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. We'll talk about starting pitchers. And be safe, guys. Be safe. Wash your hands. Cover your mouth. Don't fight cops. Um, look out for your brothers. Love you all. Take care. Bye.